Good afternoon and welcome to Sunday's Indycar. I'm Gordon Ross. Today I'm in Bearsden. It's not quite as sunny as it was yesterday, but I'm taking a little bit of time out from having painted my house yesterday. Completely made use of the weather while it was there. Anyway, watching the news in the last 24 hours, or even reading the newspapers in the last 24 hours, I was struck by two things, and it's things that people have said, the stuff that comes out of the mouths of the leaders of certain UK parties in Scotland. Now, the first one, and probably the most ridiculous one of them all, so far at least, was from Ruth Davidson, the leader of the Tory party in Scotland. And Ruth claimed to have been accosted, verbally abused in the street by a man with barking dogs, and how she had to scurry away hurriedly to avoid a confrontation. This story was spun virtually out of nothing, and in fact the man concerned, who was actually just trying to ask his MSP a question about his constituency, luckily filmed the whole event on his mobile phone just to prove that it happened the way it really happened, and not the way Ms Davidson spun it to the local media and the national media. Ruth Davidson's tweet gave rise to a whole lot of abusive and nasty comments online, basically accusing any Scottish person who wanted to ask Ruth Davidson a question of being some kind of stalker, armed with slavering attack dogs who was going to chase her down the street. I mean, it's frankly the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard. And the facts of the matter actually speak for themselves. But Miss Davidson's comments to the media sparked off a frenzy, which of course they were designed to do. She wanted to play the pity card. Poor Ruth. She was just walking along the street, minding her own business, and this nasty man came up and tried to ask her a question about the constituency whilst walking his dog. And this has morphed into attack dogs of the SNP. Nasty Nats attack Ruth on the street. Poor pregnant woman just out for a stroll, verbally accosted by evil gnats on the street. It's all a load of rubbish. And if you look at the posted media, social media movie footage of the actual event in question, it's completely different from the way Ruth characterised it. Interestingly, some women online have reacted angrily to this and actually accused other Yes campaigners of harassing Ruth Davidson and harassing women. And in fact, it never happened that way, although some in the Yes campaign have attacked or tried to attack other campaigners for trying to ask a question of Ruth Davidson, and having her running away in the opposite direction is rather typical of the response of the Conservative Party when you actually ask them a direct question about how they are going to use Brexit to help Scotland and to keep its brand identity and to make sure that Holyrood remains. You ask any question of Ruth Davidson about anything important and she will scurry in the opposite direction. Ruth Davidson has only ever held one surgery for her local constituents in 2 years of being an MSP, compared to 150 by some other MSPs who are in their constituencies working for the people who put them in office. Unlike Davidson. Now, I've said before, Ruth Davidson is a professional actress. She is also a trained BBC director. She directs her own PR. She gets her own camera crews. She writes her own material. She acts out the role of being a politician without ever actually having to deal with a single constituency issue of any description whatsoever. Interestingly, my second part of the post today is about Willie Rennie. Now, Willie Rennie is widely regarded by most people in Scotland as a bit of a joke, but he gave a speech to Scotland and Union. You know, that tiny little cabal of people who are sponsored by the wealthy landowners and the duchesses and dukes and the belted earls and all the other wealthy landowners of Scotland who've chipped in to try and keep Scotland in the United Kingdom. Well, Willie Rennie was down at one of their little meetings, addressing a packed house of almost 20 people, And one of his comments made me laugh. At the end, or towards the end of his speech, he told those in Scotland and Union that they should not try to answer any questions that they were asked by any nationalists, because if they didn't know the answer or they weren't sure of themselves, they just shouldn't answer at all, especially if it was a difficult question. They just shouldn't answer it. Now that tells you everything that you need to know about the way the British organise their campaign in Scotland and Union. We're not allowed to ask them what is good about the Union because they can't tell you what's good about the Union. They can't tell you what's good about the Union because they don't know what's good about the Union. They just know that they like it because that's the frame they've been taught to look through. They can look through the Union frame. Anything outside of that they can't accept. But if you ask them why the Union is good for Scotland, they don't know. And Willie Rennie knows this. And so he's told them that if anybody comes up to you and asks you a direct question that says, why is the Union good for Scotland? What is it doing for us? Or why will Brexit be better for Scotland than, say, independence? They are not to answer those questions. They're to scurry away like Ruth Davidson, run in the opposite direction and claim to be a victim because some nasty person has come up and asked them a difficult question that they can't really answer. It's so terrible. How awful for them to be victimised in this way. A politician as well, like Ruth Davidson, to be so cruelly asked a question that she can't answer. Don't you just feel for her, the poor woman? Well, just because you're pregnant doesn't mean that we're stupid, and it doesn't mean that Scottish independence campaigners are stalking you. It doesn't mean we're going to sick the dogs on you just because you don't answer a question. And to wind the media up and turn this into some kind of a stalking event, as if this poor man had in some way attacked Ruth Davidson in the street, is just plainly ridiculous. I mean, quite frankly, if you look at the footage of what actually happened, he was very polite, he was very civilised, he asked his questions, and he had these little dogs at his feet, he was out walking them. There was no threat. Ruth Davidson didn't want to answer the questions, couldn't answer the questions, couldn't tell him what was good about the Union, couldn't tell him why Brexit was going to be better for us than independence, couldn't tell him anything about anything, because she doesn't have the answers. Ruth Davidson is not a politician. Ruth Davidson is not an economist. Ruth Davidson does not know anything. Her job is to simply criticise Scotland and criticise the independence campaign and criticise the SNP. She has no other purpose. She is an actress playing on the stage of a media which she is a part of, which she is employed by. She is an ex-BBC hack. She's an ex-BBC presenter. She is a voice-over artist. She has a good agent, but she's not a politician. And that's why she will never answer any questions about why the Union is better for Scotland than independence. You'll notice an absolute wall of silence has come up about the Growth Commission's report this week, which was published this week, which shows a clear and simple pathway from where we are now to full independence within a decade, using sensible steps, putting in place the right financial steps so that people's pensions are protected, so that we continue to trade with the United Kingdom as normal while we progress towards our own currency. People have argued, I even argued myself earlier on when I first saw the report, that the idea of hanging on to the pound for 10 years was daft. But it's not daft. Hanging on to it for 10 years might not be needed at all, but the point is that while there's a transition going on, people's pensions need to be paid in pounds initially, simply because if there's too many currencies at play, the value of that pension will go up and down and people will be very uncertain about it. So for at least a couple of years, pensions would need to be paid in British pounds, and we would need to just continue to use them without the currency union so that normal trade happens, so that people's pensions are paid, so that their benefits are paid, so that everything is just the way it is at the moment, basically. And then gradually we get to the point where we can launch our own currency, which is probably going to be the Scottish pound, and that will be backed by a central bank with cash reserves, which we have to build up over a period of time. and which Scotland can easily do. We have plenty of income to do it. But the British media is silent on that. They run with the story that Ruth Davidson has cooked up. They are ignoring the fact that independence is now being proved not only to be possible, but there is a clearly defined route to it, based on information from British sources from the Institute for Fiscal Studies, for the Office for National Statistics, for a whole series of British agencies which govern the economy of the United Kingdom, have confirmed the figures, and those figures have been used by the Growth Commission to show how the independent state will start, how it will progress, and how it will conclude and become independent within a decade. That progression has been set out now. Everybody can see it, we can debate it, we can argue about the time frames for different things, we can even argue over the name of the currency later on, but the point is that people can now see that it's possible, that it's been thought out, that it's been planned. It's not a leap of faith. There will be a currency, there will be no currency union, that Scotland will make it on its own with its own currency. We know that now. The British press are saying nothing about it. It's as if it never happened. They run with Ruth Davidson's story. We listen to Willie Rennie's wise words at Scotland and Union. Don't answer any difficult questions. Because there are no answers. The British have no answers. They ran out of ammunition after 2014. And they don't want us to know that they don't have any answers. So they're just going to run away. They're going to avoid every single question. So if you want to take the argument to the British state, the best thing you can do is email your MSP, particularly if your MSP is somebody like Adam Tompkins or Ruth Davidson or any of the others like Murdo Fraser. Ask them, how is Brexit going to benefit Scotland? How will Brexit secure the identity of Scottish products abroad? How are jobs going to be created by Brexit when our export orders are going to drop away? How are we going to be able to feed ourselves when the pound drops in value and we can't afford to import food? These are the questions. We need to put these directly to Tories, to Lib Dems and Labour MSPs and ask them to answer those questions. I'll bet you hear nothing. Nothing at all. Anyway, listen, to round off today's show, I have one more thing to tell you about, and I've made a wee note of it because some of the details are more complicated to relate to you. Those of you in the know will know that there's a big march coming up in Dumfries, right on the doorstep of David Mundell, the Viceroy of Scotland. Right now, Graham Jones of Hoop, Hands Off Our Parliament, based in the Borders, is organising a convoy from central Scotland, from lowland Scotland, if you like, down to the Borders, a car convoy. Now, if you'd like to join in the car convoy, there are details on posted on internet. Now, Graham Jones on Facebook goes under the name of Graham Jones BK Jones. That's his handle on Facebook. The Hoop convoy details will be found on that page. There will be convoys leaving from different locations and picking up new members as they go along through different car parks, all the way down through the Borders from both Edinburgh, from Fife and from other parts of central Scotland. The idea is to create a convoy complete with flags, saltires, banners and all the rest of it to ensure that we're more visible, that people coming to the event are coming down these major roads. People will see the flags, they'll see the convoy, they'll know something is happening despite the fact that there's a media blackout. So get out there, get your flags and get on the convoy. Go on Facebook, look for Graham Jones, BK Jones. You'll find all the details for the convoy and where to join it on his page. It's updated fairly regularly. Was a little bit complicated to read, so I didn't want to just go through the whole thing on the show, but go to that page. It's the Hoop Convoy details, Graham Jones, BK Jones on Facebook. You'll find it all there. And I wish everybody the best of luck for June the 2nd. I, unfortunately, will not be able to go to that march. At the moment, I'm looking at my diary to see if I can speak at one or two other big events, perhaps over in Fife and perhaps also up in Inverness. At the moment, I'm still looking at my diary. It's difficult to firm things up just now, but I'm hoping to be able to speak at least 2 rallies over the summer period. Anyway, that's it for today's show. I hope you've enjoyed it. as I said before, remember, take the fight to the British nationalist state. Go on the offensive. Ask the difficult questions. Watch your Tory MP and your Labour, your Tory MSP, your Labour MSP, your Lib Dem MSP. Watch how fast they run away from you when you ask the questions. Encourage your friends, encourage your relatives to go on the offensive too. Write emails, write to your local papers. Complain about the fact that your MSP is not answering your questions about the safety of Scotland's jobs, about how Brexit will help the Scottish economy. Go for it. Everybody get involved. I know that somebody else is now organising a new campaign, which I heard about just this morning. I haven't got the details yet, but it sounds like a great idea of holding public sessions in public halls where the information from shows like Indycar is presented on a large screen with a full colour projector. For those who don't have the internet, for those elderly people that can't use the internet, can't use mobile phones, for a few of them to be gathered together, to be shown these informational videos and to explain to them what the truth of independence is instead of what they see on the television. It's a great idea. It's another way of becoming the media, and it's another way of bringing social media to people who don't normally see it. And I think I'm going to find out a few more details about who's organising it, but it popped up on my feed this morning. I thought it was worth a mention. If anyone knows who's organising this, let me know, because I'll be happy to plug it. Anyway, I have to go, but have a good Sunday. Enjoy the sunshine. Get out there and enjoy annoying your local UK party MSP. Go and ask them the awkward questions. Actually, write a list of questions, like the ones I was just reeling off there. How will Brexit improve the lives of me and my family here in your constituency? What are you going to do to protect my job? What are you going to do to keep the prices in my supermarkets down? How are you going to do that? You represent me, tell me. Go and make them work for their money for a change. Ruth Davidson's getting, 72,000 quid, and all she does is work for the BBC and the British media. She doesn't do anything else. She just works for the British state. She's not doing anything for any of her constituents. And I think anybody who has Ruth as their constituency list MSP ought to get onto her case and bombard her with emails demanding to know what she's going to do. When are her surgeries going to be? Give me the date for your next surgery so I can come along and talk to you. Let's see how much hiding Ruth Davidson can do. How far and how fast can she run away from the questions that you want to ask her? I think the woman is really the ultimate media whore, I think is the word that people now use nowadays. Somebody who has sold herself to the British media. She is their mouthpiece, not a politician, an actor on the stage of the BBC, STV, mainstream media, the British newspapers. It's all about Ruth and how awful they are to her. It's just terrible, these nasty nats. They've lost the argument about independence, they know it, they've gone quiet. So all they can do now is try and complain that we're harassing Ruth Davidson. Well, harass away, everybody. Don't be scared to ask questions. You'll probably all be called nasty nats. And if you have any little dogs, please take them along when you ask the questions. You know, even if they're just really tiny dogs, like a little Scottie or something like that. And get a movie of Ruth running away from you and your little Scottie dog. I'd like to see that online. I think it'd be hilarious, actually. We could do a whole compendium of how many times Ruth Davidson ran away from people with small dogs. It could be quite a good little show, that. Anyway, I'm off. I'll see you later. Have a good weekend. Bye for now.